Hi, lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Electro Revolution channel. My name is Michael and I'm a car and tech enthusiast. In this series of episodes, we're going through what's legal and what's illegal in Australian roads or different states within Australia, and what you can do, what activities, what functions, all of this sort of stuff. Like we've covered in episode 1, we spoke about actually riders and how they do lane filtering and lane splitting. In this particular episode, what we're going to cover is whether it's legal or illegal to eat, drink, smoke or vape in a vehicle while driving. Now, we will also break it up into the different states in Australia, but of course, if you're an international viewer, have a look at this. See if the laws make sense or they don't make sense, and leave a comment on what actually happens in your state or your country. It'll be great to know what happens and see if there's any similarities or differences in the way we do things in Australia and the way you do them internationally. So before I start the video, I must admit I'm quite guilty of this myself. I regularly, in the morning for example, when I'm driving, I'll have a coffee. Even though I don't hold it while steering, of course, I'll put it in the cup holder. Maybe when I'm at the lights, I'll take a sip or so forth and I'll put it back down. But also, for example, when I'm on long trips or I'm taking a holiday via the car, what I'll typically do is have some chips or biscuits or crackers or things like that while I'm driving. I can dig down into the packets and pull out exactly the one that's unbroken or the big one what I can crunch. So I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure many people have asked themselves, is this actually legal or illegal to do in a vehicle, and can I actually get fined, more importantly? So this is what we're going to cover in quite some detail here in this video. So I really hope you enjoy this video. So for the short answer, it's yes and no. Now, you'll know what I mean when I actually go through this. Can you be fined, technically speaking, for eating, drinking a non-alcoholic beverage, smoking or vaping within the vehicle? The answer is absolutely not, you can't. And that's nationally across Australia. There's no actual state or territory that will actually give you a fine with demerit points, or even just a fine without demerit points, for doing any of those activities within the vehicle. Now, if the drink is an alcoholic beverage, yes, you can get fined with demerit points. You're not supposed to be drinking and driving, and I think that's universally known. Most of the world knows that, and especially in Australia, that's universally known. That's been a law for a very long time, ever since I've been driving, and that's well over 35 years. It's always been the law. No drinking and no driving. So what's the catch, I hear you say? Well, the catch is, if you lose control of the vehicle, or it's affecting the way you drive, where you have a loss of control of the vehicle with an activity that you're doing, and of course that's any activity, but in particular eating, drinking, smoking or vaping, then yes, you can get fines and demerit points, and in some states they can be quite heavy. So let's go through those. So let's now go through per state for each of these offences. If you do lose control or not have proper control of the vehicle while eating, drinking, smoking or vaping. We'll start with New South Wales first. Now in New South Wales, you can get a maximum penalty of $2,200. The way that's worked out essentially is 20 demerit points, and each of those demerit points are worth $110 each. And you need to go to court to get a fine of that extent. So $2,200 is what the court will give you. Now in practice, of course, you can be served by the police officer with an infringement notice without having to go to court. And the common penalty for that is $481 fine with 3 demerit points. Now, of course, the court can also give you that 3 demerit points with a $2,200 fine. Now moving to Victoria. In Victoria, of course, there's no prohibition against eating, drinking or smoking or vaping within the vehicle. However, they do have a charge for careless driving. And that, unfortunately, in Victoria, also carries with it not only a penalty and demerit points, but it also carries with it a requirement to attend a safer driver training course. So the regulation is Regulation 297.1, and that is the offence of driving without proper control. That carries a penalty of 5 demerit points. Now, the fine that introduces is each demerit point is roughly $192.31. So times 5, you're looking at about $961.55. So not as much, of course, as New South Wales. And I guess, you know, New South Wales, you have to go to court for that, where this one is an on-the-spot fine. You don't actually have to go to court to get your demerit points and to get that fine from the police officer. And now for Queensland. Now, Queensland is an interesting state because the fines can go into the many thousands of dollars, and I'll explain why. Number one, if it's directly related to Section 297 of the Road Transport Operations, the Road User Management Road Rules, they have similar applications regarding the proper control of the vehicle, and that infringement for that offence is $575 with 3 demerit points. However, they have something different to other states. They have something also called driving without due care and attention, and that offence holds with it a maximum of 40 penalty units or 6 months imprisonment. It's quite strict. Now, what does a unit cost? In this case, $166.90. So when you consider 40 penalty points, you're looking at $6,676 for driving without due care and attention. So to me, I don't think there's too much difference between losing control of a vehicle and that particular fine. So it'll be under the, I guess, decision or choice or understanding of the police officer that's actually fining you, or likely having to go to court to then explain the situation. And usually with vehicles, especially police vehicles, they do have cameras in Australia, and sometimes the police officers also have cameras on their body, on their shirt. So it's going to be very hard to actually avoid a fine like that if it goes to court. So Queensland is quite a strict state in this regard, and it's something to be aware of. We come now to South Australia. Now, this seems a little bit more lenient in this particular state compared to what we've just gone through. Now, it's a similar road rule, Road Rule 297.1, and that states drive vehicle without having proper control of the vehicle. Now, what that is a $314 fine with no demerit points. And they also have a following rule, which is rule number 277, passenger interfering with driver's control. Now, I thought this would be interesting to actually mention in here. That means, for example, if the passenger or someone starts grabbing the wheel and a policeman sees that, or you're caught some other way, that's actually a fine also of $489, but also no demerit points. So they're things to be aware of when you're driving in South Australia. And now we come to Western Australia. Now, I couldn't find anything in particular for Rule 297. That doesn't exist in Western Australia. However, they do have a rule called careless driving, and that's, I guess, in the similar spirit of all these other rules. That's in Section 62 of the Road Traffic Act 1974. Now, that carries an infringement penalty of $500 plus 3 demerit points. And if you're on public holidays, it actually doubles to 6 demerit points. So that's something to be aware of for Western Australia. And now we come to Tasmania. I'm actually surprised with the difference that the fines give you between states. Some states consider it a massive penalty, other states not so much. This is where we come to Tasmania. Tasmania can give you a fine of $2,050. Now, where does that come from? It says the regulation is 297, as we're accustomed to. Drivers must not drive unless proper control, and that carries 10 penalty units. Now, this is the issue, is the penalty units. That determines the fine that you get. So in Tasmania, each penalty unit as of 1st of July 2025 is $205. And you have to note, when you go to the Tasmanian government website, they index it regularly, almost every year. So that at the moment is $205, but with indexing, it gets more and more each year. So a $2,050 fine. It's quite hefty for not having proper control of the vehicle. And now in the ACT, Australian Capital Territory, what we see there is a similar road rule, the road rule 297.1, drive without proper control of a vehicle. And that attracts a fine of $407, but I couldn't find anywhere where it talked about demerit points. So I would say demerit points may apply in this particular case. Now they do also have that related rule, rule 272, passenger interfering with the driver's control, and that itself attracts another fine of $208 just out of interest. And now we come, last but not least, the Northern Territory. Now we also looked for the same rules 297 or 272. Couldn't find much on the Tasmanian government's website. However, they do have the more serious offences, which is driving dangerously or negligent driving. Now, what the courts can impose on this particular offence or these particular offences is up to 20 penalty units, and that's in fines or 2 years imprisonment. And there's also a mandatory licence cancellation for at least 6 months. Quite heavy. Now, what's a unit? I found this on the Tasmanian website. From the 1st of July 2025 to the 30th of June 2026, it's actually $189. So what we do there, $180 times 20, that gives you the maximum fine of $3,780. That's a hefty fine for those particular offences. So that's per state. Let's now look at additional things like smoking. Now, why I put this one into its own category is smoking is technically legal in all states across all territories within Australia nationally. Smoking is legal, vaping is legal. But guess what? As many of you would know, for the children that are passengers in the vehicle, yes, you can get hefty fines. Now, this is why it's in its separate category. Some states have it under 16, some states have it under 17. So let's go through them individually and find out exactly how much these fines are. So for New South Wales, for under 16, it's up to $1,230. For Victoria, for under 18s, it's up to $1,015. For Queensland, having a passenger in your vehicle while you're smoking in the vehicle, for under 16s, it's up to $3,308. In South Australia, for the under 16s, it's got a huge fine of $5,315. I mean, you really got to, I'll repeat that, $5,315 for smoking in your vehicle and having a child under the age of 16 in your vehicle. Now for WA, under 17s, it's between $200 and $1,000 for the fine. In Tasmania, for the under 18s, it's up to $4,100. In the ACT, and that's the biggest of all, under 16s, $8,000 fine. That's incredibly huge fine for the Australian Capital Territory if you're smoking in your vehicle and you have an under 16 passenger. In the Northern Territory, last but not least, under 16s, they get a fine of $3,780. Now, in Queensland, there's also an extra law banning smoking in work vehicles if another person is present. So that's an additional thing that they add to Queensland. So that's irrespective of the person's age. So I hope that covers that point off clearly. Now let's go through the takeaways of this video. So technically speaking, eating, drinking, smoking or vaping is not illegal while driving in Australian roads. I wonder how it is internationally, whether they're very similar, but it can have very heavy fines and loss of demerit points and sometimes jail time, as we saw previously, if there's certain conditions that are met where you lose control, you drive negligently, or you drive dangerously on the road. So these are things that we really need to be aware of and to avoid when doing. Now, this also gave me some insight. As I said in the introduction, I drink coffee in the morning in the car when I drive. When I go on long trips, I typically eat and stuff like that. So they're the takeaways, what I would actually recommend in these situations. And there's a point there that when smoking with minors in the car, every single state in Australia has extreme heavy penalties for performing that activity while there's a minor present in the vehicle. So they're things to avoid, definitely. So I'd say next time, you're tempted to, juggle a hamburger or, juggle a coffee or do something like that while having your hands off the steering, or maybe one hand off the steering, remember these particular fines and these particular demerit points and the offences that, you'll get hit with if you're caught doing this within the vehicle. So before my ending comments, I'd love to open it up to your thoughts and your comments. What do you think of maybe the fines, the demerit points, the things like that, how they differ per state? Of course, for our international viewers, you can give us your thoughts and ideas also, and the laws, if they're similar or they differ or they add things to those laws. It would be quite interesting. I mean, maybe even if you've done these things, or what you thought was legal or what not legal, and those things. So anyway, I'll come to my ending comments now. Now, I do have to say something, of course, with these ending comments. So if, for example, you really need to eat, or you really need to drink, or you really need to smoke or vape, do it in a safe manner. And, I also notice when I drive, and I notice this very regularly, women, for example, they love doing their makeup, the hair, the lipstick, and all this sort of stuff while they're driving. And I see many of them, of course, they do it at the lights when they're stopped, which is, again, acceptable. But if you're going to be doing something, I guess, that's going to interfere with your driving or give you the potential to lose control or get caught, I would suggest just pull up on the side of the road for 5 minutes, finish that burger or finish that slushy or whatever you're drinking or whatever you're eating, or the makeup, finish it on the side of the road and get back into driving, because the whole issue here is staying focused on the road while you drive. Of course, this is why there's fines for using your phone at the same time, because that's all about attention and focus on the road. Now, that's what I would suggest if you were to do something like that. Pull up on the side of the road, do it, and get back into driving where you can have both hands on the steering wheel. I mean, we don't all have Tesla's FSD or full self driving right at this day today. So maybe one day you could do things like that, but not today. You will get fined for it. So I really hope you enjoyed this video and you found it informative. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this content with someone who'd be interested, or leave a comment. We'd really love to hear your thoughts, and especially for the international viewers, the way the laws are overseas also. So until the next episode, I'll see you there. Bye for now.